Welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast, where we believe there is a produce mom in all of us. I'm Lori Taylor, founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, I sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores in the U.S. And today, my team and I are fully focused on inspiring people to eat more fruits and vegetables. This show is just one of the ways that we hope to inspire you and your family to eat more produce and live a better life. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, join our community of almost 40,000 in all 50 states and over 30 countries by visiting theproducemoms.com/subscribe. And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's show. My, oh my, welcome back to the Produce Moms Podcast. This is an episode I've been waiting for since the day I launched this podcast in 2018. And our guest today, she's probably my favorite person in the whole produce industry, maybe even in the whole world. Talk about a celebrated, accomplished, strong female with really every sort of leadership trait and personality trait that we should all strive to have and be. Our guest today is Sarah Frey. She was recently recognized by the produce industry as Produce Woman of the Year. Beyond that, this woman is a celebrated hero in American agriculture. If you have purchased a pumpkin or a watermelon in the United States of America, you are more than likely her customer. And she just published her memoir, The Growing Season. I finished it in 2 days. I could have done it in one day, but I didn't start it until like 9 p.m. at night. And so I had to take a break to sleep. But this woman, her story, this book, it's going to move your soul and it'll change your life forever. And welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast to Sarah Frey, my dear friend, and just a champion for all human beings. Sarah, welcome.
Hi, Lori. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm so proud of you, and thank you so much for that gracious introduction. And I've been watching you grow and build your business and your foundation, and really build what is a lifestyle at the Produce Moms. And I'm so proud of you and everything that you've done. And I feel very blessed that you've been a part of my journey as well. I know that we started talking about, the growing season a very long time ago. And I shared with you, some of the struggles that I had, when writing the book. It was very difficult. Yeah. It was a very difficult process for me to get all of those stories out. And sure. A memoir is really just like a memoir is like photographs. It's like certain snaps of your life. So this is not an autobiography, but it's like snapshots from my life. And, many of which were very difficult to dial back up and really have to relive during the process of writing it. But you were there for me, cheering me on. And, I'm grateful for our friendship and the impact that you make on our industry. The work you do is so incredibly important.
Thank you, Sarah. You're the best. This is going to be a great, great show. So The Growing Season, I read it, like I said, really, I just couldn't put it down. I did put it down to sleep, but I so enjoyed every word, every page. And before we started the recording today, you were asking me just, who I thought the book was for. And I think the book is definitely for everyone. But when I first put it down, my first thought was my son, who is, he just turned 13 this month. And, my 13-year-old son needs to read this, because what you accomplished when you were a preteen and a teenager is unbelievable. I mean, and when I first finished the book, the first person I texted, I think, was Hillary, your niece, and another one of my dear friends. And I said, Hillary, it reminded me of the Michael Jordan documentary that we just watched on ESPN. I said, that's how much it moves your soul. This is a story of a champion. It's a story of an underdog. It's a story of entrepreneurship. But really, most importantly, it's a story of all of life's greatest lessons: forgiveness, grace, valuing education, valuing family, valuing hard work. It's already made a positive impact on my life. And I've only finished the book now, one day I've read it. I finished it one day ago, and I've already been able to find myself in a situation where my former self, prior to reading The Growing Season and understanding your story so completely, I wouldn't have handled a recent situation the way that I did this morning. I handled a situation this morning with grace and gratitude, when normally I probably would have just ignored the whole thing and walked away because I was burned in the past by this individual. And I was like, you don't need my time. But I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to try to be as good as Sarah today. And I'm going to go ahead and say thank you. And,
Oh my God. Lori, it makes my heart so happy. You have no idea how, my heart is so happy and full right now. Just hearing you say that.
Well, that's why you put in the hard work, because it is a book that'll change people's lives. And let's talk a little bit about your journey. We can start with your story. I think probably the most compelling moment in the whole book, when I was reading it, I took a photo of it on my phone, and I've got it in my photos on my phone, because I'm like, when I'm having a tough day, I want to remember this page specifically. And it was the story of when you walked into that Walmart DC, and the category manager ordered, 5 loads a week, and you thought it was pickup truck loads, not semi loads. And then when you were walking out the DC, someone mentioned semis, and you realized, dang, I just sold a multi-million-dollar deal, and I'm 19 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's, we can lead with whatever part of your journey you'd like, but I'd like to kick off the show with just you telling us a little bit more about your story and helping folks understand what Frey Farms really means, because there's an incredible story behind that brand and your family farm.
Sure. And just like you, Lori, what I do today is, I don't feel like I really have a job or a career. I feel like what I've created and bringing my family together and with business and life and love and all of these different things, really what I feel like I have is a lifestyle. I don't feel like I'm really working. It's like everything that surrounds me is what I love. And whether it's growing fresh fruits and vegetables and having my family involved in the business, it's all part, it's all in one bucket. There aren't separate buckets in my life. And, I was really inspired. To write this book because of a very similar situation, where a young woman, someone frankly that I didn't know well. She was a bartender. She one evening, I was in Washington D.C. and she was there, and she was taking a break from her bartending duties, and she said, "Hey, you're Sarah Frey. I know so and so has told me this about you," and we started to chat, and she told me about a dream that she had for her life and something that she wanted to do, but that she was kind of scared to take that step to do it. Well, what if this happens, or what if that happens? And, I shared a story with her, and it was one of your favorite stories. It really tied back to, my first meeting with Laura Marshall at that Walmart distribution center, and, being a kid and standing there and telling her looking her in the eye and shaking her hand and saying, absolutely, I can do that. But not knowing how I was going to pull it off, but getting the deal and then figuring it out behind the scenes, and then ultimately never letting anybody down in the process, making the magic behind the curtain. And about a year later, I ran into that young woman, Olivia, and frankly, I didn't even really remember the conversation. It was a very offhanded conversation. But when she told me that she was struggling, I didn't think twice, but to say, wait. What are you don't have to have it all figured out. What are you doing? Just get the deal. You have, because she had an opportunity in front of her that she was afraid. She was contemplating, gee, what if I fail? This seems like a really big deal. Am I good enough? And she was sort of maybe even questioning a little bit, like, do I have what it takes? And I, a year later, I ran into her at a chance meeting, and she ran up to me, and she was actually celebrating her birthday. And, anyway, she explained to me how her life had changed. She took my, the offhanded advice that I gave her, because I shared that story with her, and now she was running. Within a year, this woman was running this massive company, and she was managing all of these properties. And when I walked away from that meeting with Olivia, there was this thing went off inside of me, and it was like a switch flipped. And then I had this voice that was like, sort of, kind of maybe even taunted me a little bit, because I realized the power of stories, and I realized the power of words, and how, it can impact and really create meaningful change. And, they can impact and create meaningful change in people's lives. And so anyway, I had to, get my head around, I'm going to write more of this down. And I thought, oh, if she only knew, she only knew one tiny little thing, but if she knew more, and if others knew more, what could they do with those stories, and how would it change their lives? So that was really the inspiration to write this book. And that's not to say that scary monsters didn't keep popping up and throughout the process, because they did.
I imagine.
But my story starts in a rural community in Southern Illinois, far removed. I grew up in a very isolated part of our country, and in a very sort of rough and brutal way at times. That's not to say that there wasn't magic and wonderment as part of my childhood and growing up on this small family farm. But if you read the book, you realize that it wasn't the typical image of the happy little farm family, and the just like all of the purity that we think of when we think of, grew up on a farm, it's great. No, it was very tough. And, honestly, sometimes I don't know. I didn't know as a child if I would make it out alive. I lived in fear and at times, and I felt very isolated. And, I also had to learn. I had these awesome 4 older brothers. I had to learn to overcome though as well. And, they taught me these really incredible life skills that ultimately, because I learned them at such a young age, by the time I was that teenage girl standing there, with, and the opportunity to change my life, very much like Olivia was standing in front of the opportunity to change her life. I had what it took to not think twice and to say, yes, I will make this happen, and to have the confidence and to be able to believe in myself. Now, you would think that would be completely contrary, that a girl that had been through what I had been through up until that point would have that kind of confidence, right? So I was like the ugly duckling in school. I was extremely poor. My clothes were old. I had bullies, at school, and, I was the free lunch kid, and all of these things that normally would have created so many uncertainties that maybe I would have fainted in that moment, but it was really what I have found and what I know now, and especially through the process of writing The Growing Season, I know that all of those disadvantages that I had, and all of those things that I had to overcome as a child, really only became the advantages. The disadvantage became the advantage. And I think about, so what was it in those moments? And I would dial up times of trauma. I would dial up times of when I felt fear, but then overcame. When later on in life. And I still do. I mean, to this day, I still do that. It's not like, oh, I'm just completely fearless and I just go out and do everything like, with courage and conviction. No, I still feel that. But when I do, I dial up some of those hard times. And I remember the feeling of when I got through it and what that felt like and how good that can be.
That's
And
right.
Ultimately, I think that there are lessons in the growing season for everyone, for women, for men, for children. The book got a Library Journal starred review, which is a really big deal in the industry. So it will be stocked at libraries and in schools across the country. And
It should be. Honestly, this book should get every award that is possible for a book to get. That's how I felt when I closed it. I was like, that's the best book I've ever read.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Lori.
It's so good. I'm glad to hear that because like I said, when I first closed the book, the first person I thought of was my 13-year-old that needed to read it. So I'm glad it's going to be part of schools and libraries. Yeah.
We were very proud to receive that review from the Library Journal. And so the book's out and it's like a crazy time right now,
Right.
And now looking back, I remember times when I was writing this and pouring everything that I had into these words and sitting there staring into my computer and with tears streaming down my face, just silently crying because it was like my whole life. I let people see what they wanted to see what was easy to see. And that was, oh, this is Sarah. Isn't she nice? Oh, she's from the Midwest. She grew up on a farm. Isn't that great? Oh, I bet her father put her in charge of the farm. Oh, look at that. She has her brothers that work with her. Isn't this perfect, family? And oh, that's so nice. Her dad probably put her in charge. And I never told anyone the full story. Not because I was dragging around a dead horse from my past. It was just frankly easier. I was busy. I didn't want to take the time. I didn't correct people when, they thought that I was the purchase order clerk when they walked into my office. I didn't tell them, hey, no, actually, you want to talk to the man in charge? He's right here. That'd be me. I'm the man in charge.
Right.
And I didn't do those things. And so really, throughout this process, it was like, oh my gosh, your life's gonna change, and it's gonna be so much easier just to keep all of this to yourself. Like, why do you want to share this with the world? What is wrong with you? And but this little voice wouldn't shut up. And when I really got close to the point of giving up and saying, I can't do this. I have lived my life. People have a perception of me that I just need to let them go through life with, and my life will be easier. This voice of, probably 15, 16, 17-year-old Sarah would like call me a coward. And I would be like, oh, okay. All right. Okay. And I won't say that through the process, although I wanted to be able to share these stories to impact other people's lives, and not just inspiration. I think we use that word inspiration and it's great. We all want to feel inspired, but like you told me earlier, I read this and I did something differently. You took an action. And
your whole life was action oriented, Sarah.
Yeah.
Your whole life you were.
That was the thing. When Olivia told me that she read the story and took an action, like you just told me, I read the story and I took an action. For me, that was more powerful than inspiration. It was action. There were actionable things that people took away from the story, actionable items that they applied in their own life that actually made a difference and a change. And
let's talk about some of the actions you took, because your actions that are part of this memoir are remarkable. So let's start, if you feel like it's the right starting point, let's start with, the first several chapters are about your childhood, and it sets the tone for what would have, you're not on paper, you're not supposed to be where you're at today, Sarah. Everyone knows that. And especially when you go so vividly into how you lived as a child. So let's start when you start doing the melon route with your mom, because that was really what, to me, that's when I felt like this is when Sarah was became part of the produce industry, and her legacy started to be built. But certainly this is your show. If you want to, start somewhere else, we can, but I think that's a good starting place.
It's a great starting place. My love of produce and my love of food in general and grocery retail really was inspired because I was able to get off of this farm. I mean, my whole life, if you would have asked me when I was a kid, oh, are you going to be a farmer when you grow up? I would have said, hell no, I'm not going to be a farmer.
Right. Find me in New York City. Yeah.
I'm out of here, but the inspiration from, and the passion and the enthusiasm for our industry came at a very early age when I was running that produce delivery route with my mother. I remember standing in the middle of a grocery store for the very first time and looking around and just like, I was completely overwhelmed. And
how old were you, Sarah?
Approximately. I don't know. I was probably 7 or so. Uh-huh. And I was looking at, packaged food really for the first time, like real packaged food, because the way we grew up, like literally hunting our food and processing our own meat and growing our own fruits and vegetables. And, rarely was there anything but loaves of bread in our house that were in a bag. So the first time I was like, oh, well, this is heaven. Hello, grocery store. You don't have to hunt it. You don't have to hunt it, kill it, clean it, pick it, whatever. It's like all right here. So, I was just as taken with the grocery store as I was a thermostat when we didn't have heating in our home outside of a wood stove growing up. And I remember having that same feeling the first time I saw a thermostat, and, the thermostat would get turned and magically heat would come on. And, I was probably a little younger when I discovered the thermostat, and I thought it was like this little magic box. But for me, that I know exactly the moment, and I can remember with such clarity the moment that my fascination with food and fresh produce began. And I really have my mother to thank for that, because it was her creativity and her desire to get off of the farm as well, mm-hmm. and to do something more for the family, which gave her the grit to get an old pickup truck and haul melons from Indiana, southern Indiana. And and I love your state. I'm also actually a little jealous that I don't live across the Wabash at times, because I was split. I grew, my summers were spent in the Wabash River Valley, going to those melon farms. And some of my best memories were over there in the sand. And actually, when I started the company at an early age, after I bought our family farm here.
And how old what age were you at that age?
Well, I was about 17 when I took over the farm. And then,
and when you say take over, this is also one of my favorite parts of the book. It is not like, oh, they signed it over to me. It's no, Sarah went at the age of 17 and hustled your way to a, significant loan amount, and you purchased the farm. You bought it outright.
So that was, the farm was rapidly declining, and we were we had reached the end. And, I go into sort of the family dynamics of what had happened in the book, like that led everything to that point. But my 4 older brothers were off at college, and I was the last kid left on the farm. So, and I was happily going to just trail right after my brothers and get the heck out of here. And
sure.
When faced with the finality of that decision and how our lives would be affected, and when I say our lives, I mean myself and my brothers, had I walked away instead of taking a stand, things would have been very different. And in that moment and standing on this hill, you know, when I walked that last horse off of the farm that we had and put it in the trailer and knew that the bank at some point in the future would be taking our home away, you know, I had this feeling that, you know, we'll never have anything to come home to. Like, where will we go? Mm-hmm. And the thought was, what will happen to us, to the family? Forget about the land that I was standing on and the farm where we had made all of these memories. The memories were of the interaction, swimming in a pond with my brother, learning to swim in a pond with my brothers, you know, picking fresh blackberries, wild blackberries down the back road, and, you know, huddling around the wood stove for warmth in the winter together. And it was like a movie reel set off in my head when, you know, the time for me to leave in that moment. Sure. When I thought this is it, came. And so ultimately the decision to buy the farm was not driven so much by the land as it was the family. And I think we can all really relate to that. I mean, what, you know, we would give anything for our families, right? Family is the most important thing in the world. And mm-hmm. for me, as a 17-year-old girl at that time, knowing that I had dreams of moving to a city and eating in restaurants, I think I didn't want to hunt anymore. I wanted to create a normal life for myself so quickly, you know, and escape the past. But when faced with that decision, you know, the family really was front and center, and I decided to stay, to take a stand and to fight and to figure it out. And ultimately that's, you know, the rest is history.
Right. And it was 17 through 19, because 19 was really that serendipitous moment at the Walmart DC. But for those years in between, from when you bought the farm to when you got that amazing opportunity that you earned. I mean, most people wouldn't have had the guts to walk into that DC and say, hey, I'm delivering to your stores. It'd be a lot easier for me to bring my truck right here to the DC. But talk a little bit more about your route between those and how you grew so much from 17 to 19 that really empowered you to get into things like full semi loads and the Frey Farms operation that we know today.
Well, you know, I was, my delivery route had expanded by that point. I moved out when I was 15. I had a pickup truck when I was 16, hauling melons. I was attending high school and college simultaneously. I was basically, I was an adult, you know, I was already adulting. And, you know, I was driven so much by, getting out and getting away and just bettering my life, that I didn't, you know, I was just very focused on how quickly can I do this. So my life and the people around me, because you also have to remember, I mean, I made my first deal when I was 8 years old. You know, my mom said, go in the store and ask the manager how many cantaloupes or watermelons that he wanted, you know, and I'm like, okay, because you didn't question, you know, your parents. You were told to do something and you did it. Right. Not, oh, gee, Mom, I don't want to have to talk to him. I'm scared. Like, nope, no. Yeah. You walked around the store until you got enough courage to go up and talk to the manager. You definitely didn't go back out to the hot truck and say, I couldn't do that. So, you know, during that time, I was just very focused on building as many, client relationships as I could, getting as many retailers onboarded as I could. So I actually had a very successful business, especially for being a one-woman show when I was 17 already, really. Sure. You know, I was also dealing with people in our industry who were a little cross, you know, quite frankly. I was dealing with the Stanley Greenspans of the world who, you know, I mean, there were some tough people, and there still are. You still have to be very tough to be in our industry. I mean, let's face it, you know, I mean, it's not for the faint at heart. I mean, there's so much risk, you know, there's so much pressure. You're delivering, you know, you're growing, you're packing, you're shipping, you're harvesting, you're selling, you're marketing these really time sensitive, products. And, it's a very tough business. And so I had a lot of people around me too that ultimately I was doing business with and interacting with that they weren't exactly shrinking violets, in fact, just the opposite. So I had to learn to like stand up for myself and stand up to people and do these, like these things that ultimately, I mean, you wouldn't think that a child, and I was basically still a child, would be able to have the courage to do. So, by the time I walked into that DC, I mean, it was like, what are they going to do? Like nothing. Like they're like, of course I'm going to, I had gotten accustomed to just opening doors up for myself and not being, and having confidence.
There's some great stories in the book of you just saying, okay, I'm going to go find the person in charge and opening. Yeah. And there, one in particular, I believe it was in St. Louis in the terminal market.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yep. And you opened and you marched right through, right up to the top floor into the bullpen. And that, that's where I worked at the bullpen of a wholesale distributor for 10 years before we started the Produce Moms. But, so it's rowdy. There's a lot of F-bombs. There's a lot of, not a lot of women. And Sarah marched right on up there on a quest to find the person in charge. And just when she realized all eyes from the bullpen were on her, she kept marching and she opened a door. And the way you described it in the book, you're like, I was just so relieved it wasn't a broom closet.
I was. Well, see, when I, I was like holding my beer when I marched up those stairs. This guy told me, nah, we don't have anything for you. We're not going to sell you anything. Here I was a kid. I had like a pickup truck and a set of cattle racks in a truck, and the guy didn't want to sell me melons. I'm like, well, who the hell are you? Somebody has an office up there, and I'm going to go talk to them. And I just marched past him, and with all this confidence and courage, and then I get to the top of the steps, and I open the door, and then bam, I'm in this room, and there are like 12 or 14 men at these desks, and I'm standing in the middle of the room. They all have phones to their ears. The typical produce guys hustling produce, doing their deals, and they all look at me like I was a comet that just had crashed into the middle of the room. This girl in a baseball cap and blue jeans and work boots, and and I looked at them and they looked at me, Lori, and I was like, okay, yep, maybe this wasn't such a good idea, but I couldn't let them see me sort of freak out. And no one said a word. They just stared at me. So I thought, keep walking. And there was this door in front of me at the end of the bullpen. So I just kept on walking like I'm Sarah Frey. Of course I'm supposed to be here. While you're all in your nice dress shirt sitting at your desk, and I'm in my t-shirt and blue jeans and ball cap. Yeah, of course I belong. And I just swung that door open and walked right in, partially because I was terrified. But, I don't know that no one would have picked up on that at that moment. And I happened to, and the office door that I had opened was Stanley Greenspan's office. Yeah. And, I did have that thought. Thank God I just didn't walk into a broom closet, because that would have been so embarrassing.
One of my favorite parts of the book, this story right here. Yeah, it's great. It's great. And, another favorite part of the book for me, Sarah, was you talking about driving through rural Indiana to pick up your melons and talking about, there's just something about the way they pick fruit in Indiana. It's girls in bikinis and in the fields. It's a little bit different than tractors and, sweaty work crews in other states. And I got to say, that was one of the first things I texted you when I finished the book was, I definitely picked corn in a sports bra in Indiana. And oh my gosh.
That's what we did. You think about it when we were kids, it was like, we're going to work on the farm and get a tan, my brothers used to be mesmerized. We'd go over to these Indiana farms and they'd look at these Indiana girls and they'd all be in their bikini tops and cut off shorts and pitching melons all day. Like, oh my gosh. Yep. So, but that's how we did it. And that's so cool that you had that experience growing up with your girlfriends as well. And I just you know what? It's just, it's something very special, about growing up here in the Midwest. And we did some things that were unique to Indiana, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, I love it. And let's talk about where you're at today. I mean, like I said when I introduced you, from that 17-year-old girl marching into the office in St. Louis, demanding that that the company sells you those cantaloupes on the dock, to the gal that walks into the DC, the under construction distribution center for Walmart, saying, "Hey, I'd sure like to deliver here instead of all your stores. Be less trips on my truck." And realizing that the order you just got was for semi loads, not pickup loads. To the gal, I loved the part in the book where you talked about the farm auctions you went to and what a paradox of emotions that was for you as a farmer, real understanding what the farmers were going through at the farm auctions. So that's another great highlight in the book that all of our listeners can look forward to as they dive in. And where you're at today. I mean, tell us a little bit more about the footprint of Frey Farms, and then we'll get into Sarah's Homegrown and Tsamma juice.
Well, Lori, as you know from reading in the book, and you've actually got to visit our farm even during COVID. You came to the drive.
Had to come support the kids, Sarah.
Yeah,
I had to
the
come.
drive-through. Yeah, it was crazy. So I'm so proud of them and what they've done and their own entrepreneurial spirits. In fact, I'm learning so much from them now. And hey, today we're still headquartered here in the middle of nowhere in Southern Illinois, down the road from the family farm that I grew up on. I still live, and I'm talking to you today from the hill, Lori. I'm looking out over the beautiful rolling hills, and it's really ironic because in this age of a global pandemic, I find myself at this place that I talk about wanting to escape my whole life, wanting to leave. And, a big part of my life, wanting to leave and dreaming of getting away and going anywhere but here. And then today it's so ironic. This place is the escape. It is safe. Yep. It is, there really aren't many people around here except for, the people closest to me that I love. And, I don't feel like I've been in lockdown. I feel very free here now. So, there's a lot of irony in that. And, our headquarters, remains here in Southern Illinois where, my roots are, but we've expanded. I also have a very adventurous spirit, and I've had a very adventurous spirit since I was a little girl. And, so that's what ultimately took us to different parts of the country where we bought farms and started growing different types of fruits and vegetables and expanded our operation to be more than just a seasonal supplier of fruits and vegetables. And so now today we operate in 7 different states, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Arkansas, Missouri, and then we have a farm not far outside of Washington, D.C. in the panhandle of West Virginia. Pumpkins are still the thing still the commodity that Frey Farms is best known for, although it's a small part of what we do. But it's the thing that I'm probably most passionate about, as you know. Yeah. And I think that really just stems from the fact that pumpkins make people happy. And if I like to bring joy to people, and I think that what we do with our fall crop brings a lot of joy. And so yes, that makes me happy. And, we've ventured into creating consumer packaged goods. And I've really approached business the same way I've approached life. And I think that's why, the growing season isn't just a business book, and it isn't just a memoir about, my personal life. It's where the two come together. And that's the way. So when I have ideas for new products, it really stems from something personal to me. Like when I was a young girl, food didn't go to waste because we didn't have a lot of food. Nothing was wasted. Everything, we found a use for everything. Everything had a purpose. And so, as you know, in the ag industry, there's a lot of food waste. And frankly, I saw it within our own business. And that's what inspired me to start my first the brand, Tsamma, watermelon juice, TSAMMA, Tsamma watermelon juice. I knew that there could be a higher purpose for the melons that had visual imperfections that wouldn't end up on the grocery retail shelves. And so we started making that, and with the help of this really incredible chain in Florida, one of my favorite grocery chains in Florida, Publix. I mean, they believed in me. They believed in the product, and they took a chance on bringing that product in, and they gave it time to catch on, because as you know, like we weren't used to drinking bottled watermelon juice, and so just really recently. So when I launched,
you were a real visionary with that. You were the first in market with any sort of watermelon juice. Yep.
Well, so when we launched, it was, that was that relationship with that awesome retailer that helped make that successful. But the inspiration,
was it 2014? I can't remember. I mean, we supported it when I was at the sales desk at Indie Fruit and doing some marketing when the Produce Moms was owned by Indie Fruit.
2014. And it just really took hold in the Southeast. And like I said, entirely because of that relationship with Publix. And it wasn't always easy, frankly. I mean, it was a product that, it took time. It took time to catch on. Now the product has a cult following in the Southeast, and consumers, I mean, they're addicted to it. It's a great product. So we're ready to expand that.
It's why I tell Chip, it's why we got to go to Florida so I can stock up.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. It's an amazing product. It's so good. And for anyone out there that's seen it on shelf, I'll tell you what, I've started to try to get back into my jogging game. Nothing rehydrates me better than Tsamma juice. It's really an incredible performance hydration beverage. It's also a great beverage to just, the lycopene and the citrulline in this juice is, and those are nutritional components of watermelon, of course. But the fact that you can get that in a beverage is really unique. And I highly recommend you, if you see it on shelf, you've got to get it, because you're going to like it. Your kids are going to like it. It's a heck of a lot healthier for them than any other, sports hydration beverage that's out there. And, Sarah and her family have done a great job with that product line. And I wish you continued success with it, Sarah.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you. And I'm also really excited about the Sarah's Homegrown. We launched the Sarah's Homegrown brand.
Me too.
This last year. And that brand is really sort of my personal way to reaching. I will never forget how we started, and we still approach our business every day as if we're a small local family farm. I mean, look at what the kids, are doing with their drive-through, that no matter what part of the country we're farming in and growing food and supplying food, it's, we've become a national supplier of fresh fruits and vegetables, but always keeping in mind, the emphasis on, what is local and what is regional. And so for me, with the Sarah's Homegrown brand, it's my desire to reach other small and mid-sized farms, help those farms use more of what they grow, find markets for the fruit that might be otherwise wasted, turn those things into fresh, delicious ingredients that wind up in products, consumer packaged good products under the Sarah's Homegrown brand. They're made with clean, simple ingredients that ultimately are sourced from, small farms across the country, and that allow more of those profits to return to the farms by helping the growers use more of what they produce. And, that is really, that's just another brand that stems from, my life experiences. And, life is imperfect, just like fruit can be imperfect. But what do you do with the imperfect life? What do you do with the imperfect fruit? Do you look past the imperfections, and do you see the greater good? Do you find the greater purpose for it? And I know that through all of the trials and tribulations in my life, I have viewed it as, I have viewed it through the lens of getting past it and seeing the greater good. And when I, bring this back full circle to really the lessons in the book and how, that my childhood shaped and formed, informed the decisions and actions that I took as a young woman and today as a mom. It's really what I learned in those really, truly imperfect moments in life that help me every single day and help me get through challenging times. Like, we've all sort of felt isolation living in COVID, and I draw back on the memories of being a child here on the farm and feeling very isolated from the rest of the world and alone. And, there's a lot of fear, and I draw back on a lot of the experiences where I felt just terror at times, not just fear, but terror. And the memories and emotions that I draw from are, what did I feel like when I stood up to that, and how did that make me feel, and how free I was after that. And I think that's why I think this book, the timing for this book, with everything going on in the world, there couldn't be a better time.
It's providential.
It is more relevant today to what people are going through than probably any other time in our history. And I know now, like, I couldn't have told you 6 months ago, I couldn't have told you a year ago what the higher purpose for the growing season was. I felt it. I was driven by knowing there was a higher purpose for it. And I could tell you, yes, I want to inspire people. I want them to read some of these stories. And my hope is that they take action in their own lives and change their own lives. And I could have told you all of those things, but really the driving force was this unexplainable feeling of a higher purpose. And I didn't know what it was. Like, I couldn't articulate it. I wouldn't have been able to tell you, oh, Lori, this is what it is. But I know that now, which is why now that this book's out, it belongs to the world. It's no longer mine. It belongs to everyone else. It belongs to you. It belongs to my boys. It belongs to my neighbor. It belongs to the young woman in New York City who's been, was trapped in her apartment for 3 months and, was afraid to go out and get food at the grocery store. It's for the young woman, growing up in rural poverty, in the deep South. It's for someone living in LA. There is something in this book for everyone across the country. And I get it now. I understand the higher purpose.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, Sarah, what an episode this has been. I want to make sure that before I share my closing remarks, and, we have a tradition on the Produce Moms podcast. You actually get the last word, not me. So our guests get the final say and goodbye. But before we make that transition, first of all, thank you for being so real and so gracious with your time and being our guest today on the show. The way Sarah just spoke in this episode, folks, it's that same friendly, real, down to earth tone that's just going to suck you into this book once you start reading it. And there is a higher purpose to it. Like I said, it's a book that will move your soul and make you a better person and help you live a better life. So it doesn't matter if you for some reason don't care for pumpkins, cantaloupes, or watermelons, you're still going to love this book. I promise you. But Sarah, we got to remind folks that, you can buy it really wherever you buy books, Amazon, Walmart.com. You can certainly visit the Frey Farms website, FreyFarms.com. And they've got it linked right there on their homepage as well. All the different places you can buy it online. But how do I close this one out? I mean, Sarah, when I was planning to start the podcast in 2018, the producer who helped me put it together, his name was Bryant. And one of the exercises he made me do before we would even get into the shows was to write down my 5 ideal guests for the Produce Moms podcast. And you were number 1 on the list.
Aww.
Yeah. And, and I just kind of feel like timing is everything. I mean, I've known you, since really that 2014 timeframe when my former employer and myself were supporting Frey Farms with the launch of Tsamma juice. That was really the first time I met you. And to know you is to be in awe of you. And you've made an incredible impact on my life. And I'm really glad that we could do the show today. And this first time I'm crying on the podcast, but I told you before the show, I brought Kleenexes. They're next to the laptop here. But so that being said, thank you for everything. You're the best. Thank you. You get the final word.
Lori, I'm so incredibly proud of you, and I'm incredibly proud of all of the women working in our industry, all of the female entrepreneurs across the country. Who get up and do what we do every day. There are no separate buckets for our life. It's all rolled into one. And I think that's kind of unique to women. And it ultimately, we all can relate. It doesn't matter if our businesses are different, if I'm a farmer or if you're a producer or my friend is a doctor, whatever. I mean, Alton has our own practice where we all really share this common bond that when we build and when we create our lives as women, and ultimately we're bringing everything into one. So I hope that my hope for you is the same hope that I have for everyone else who's starting their journey, they're starting their business, a new career, whatever it is that they're doing. Is don't apologize. Just go after what it is you want. Shed any guilt that you may have, whether you're a mom, a working mother, and you're trying to build your business, whatever it is. Shed that guilt. And my wish is that all of your dreams come true, and just know that when you feel fear, that you have it inside of yourself. It is there. Your courage is there, and it's been waiting the whole entire time. You just have to own it and own your power, and you'll be successful. So that's what I would close for, is just a wish of success for all of my sisters in the industry and across the country.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Produce Moms Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a featured guest, just send an email to lori@theproducemoms.com. We know there is a produce mom in you because there's a produce mom in all of us. Join our community on Facebook and all social platforms. Help us change the way America eats. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.